Here are the sponsors for the video tour.
Our diamond sponsors include Farm Credit Canada, Van Muken Farms, Van Breek Farm Nursery. Gold sponsors include BSF, NM Bartlett, the Nova Scotia Crop and Livestock Insurance Commission, Paul Lanahan and RBC Dominion Securities, Scotian Gold, Truro Argamart, and V-Cross Nurseries. Our silver sponsors include Bear Crop Science, Bishop and Company, Corteva Agri-Science, Grindstone Creek Nursery, and Nova International Equipment. And our bronze sponsors include Cavendish Agri-Services, Eastern Drainage, Evans Manufacturing Company, Nova Scotia Farm Loan Board, Perennia, Provide Agro, TD Agriculture, Upper Canada Growers. And we also have a general sponsor, Adams County Nurseries.
Hi, thanks for joining me. We're going to go and see Rob Peill's new planting today. So we're just on our way over there right now. Rob told me that he grew up on this farm and he worked off farm for 25 years, but he returned to the farm within the last 10 years and he's been focused on removing old orchard and replacing it with high density orchard. Okay, here we are in the new planting, so let's just go see if we can find Rob.
Good morning, I'm Rob Peill. Welcome to Townplot Orchards, Wellington Dyke, Nova Scotia.
So it's a fairly large planting that we're talking about. Can you give an overview of the trees in that planting, like their age, their rootstock, the varieties that you have in there?
Okay, so that planting is about a 30-acre planting, 25 or 30-acre planting, and we started that in 2017. We planted 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, and I want to finish it in 2021.
Now Rob is going to give us a walking tour to show us varieties on different rootstocks.
I dabble around with different rootstocks, and so it is interesting to watch the differences as they develop.
Okay, lead the way.
Gala, G41.
Rob likes G41 so far. He also mentioned the Gala had some fire blight challenges in the first year, but it's since been cleaned out, interplanted, and it's coming along nicely now.
4 more rows of Honeycrisp on M9.
A little slow for me. They're just a little bit slow to keep up. So they're out of production for longer than other roots.
Honeycrisp, 202, 2 rows. Corpse Ambrosia, 2 rows.
And that seems to be a nice combination, 2.5 feet apart.
Honeycrisp M26.
M26 is standard. You know how to handle that one. It's pretty good.
Honeycrisp M26, 4 rows in here that were bud in place. Never do that again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, real struggles with that.
Yeah.
A lot of interplanting, a lot of labor. I won't do that anymore.
Okay.
Honeycrisp on M7. Looks nice this year. I'll pay for that in years to come. These guys are going to be, I'll be cutting a lot of wood of them, right?
Yeah.
I'm fearful of that.
But for now, I like it filled in nicely, and I'll be taking my first crop off it this year. I need more time to know the final answer, I guess.
Honeycrisp, so supporter 4. The rest of this block, a little slower, a little bony. We'll see what happens. Give it time, right?
Yeah.
We stripped it, there's no crop in there.
I'm still trying to figure out if I like supporter 4 or not. It seems to be a decent combination on Sweet Tango. Just not sure what it's going to do with Honeycrisp.
2019, last year, a couple of rows of Ambrosia.
Okay.
Royal Red, Honeycrisp, M7s. You actually have rootstocks I don't like, same row here.
202 again?
202 is one I don't like. It's a very bony tree. This is out of my nursery. This is a 935 out of my nursery.
Okay.
In the nursery side by side. I can't crop that this year. I'm cropping that this year. This is Sweet Tango on supporter 4.
Okay.
I like it. I mean, what's not to like about that?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that was planted in 2018, but that's first crop of Sweet Tango, and look at the uniformity in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
I might regret supporter 4 too, because it may be more aggressive. I don't know much about it. Back into the Ambrosia. This is that stuff from last year, which I really kind of like it. It's done well. It's growing well.
Good.
And we're into this year's planted stuff.
Okay.
So this is the same thing. 2 more rows of Ambrosia here, and then we're into Premier Honeycrisp.
935 I like. It's lots of vigor. I just don't know in the future if it's going to be problematic from a vigor point of view or not.
Now for the rest of the tour, we'll zoom in on some key features. And what's your usual spacing? I know depends on rootstock, but what kind of densities are you looking at?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much all 3 by 12. The M7s, I push them out to 3.5 feet in a row. You know, some of the nines are at 2 feet in the row. In this planting, everything I have is 12 feet, and real vigor stuff is going to be 3.5 feet, and less vigor stuff is going to be at 2 feet.
And then what about your trellis system?
So I'm in pursuit of the perfect trellis, and it's kind of an iterative process to try and find the right one, and I've made all kinds of mistakes along the way here. And so I'm headed toward a multi-wire system without any vertical supports. Of course, conduit has sort of become a bit cost prohibitive. I really have no use for bamboo because I just don't see it as a long-lived enough vertical support. So we now are to a multi-wire. And if we have really short trees, that'll be a 7-wire system. And if we have some trees that are 5 or 6 feet tall, then we can do it in a 5-wire system. And basically wires at 16 inches on 14-foot poles, top wire at 10 foot. Spending a little more time these days paying attention to wire tension and, wire connections and those kinds of details. You know, after we went that hurricane last year, I had some failures. So time is well spent with some of those details.
Just checking in on you guys. I hope you're having a good time. Okay, and how about the in-row post spacing?
So started off at 35 and then went down to 32 from 2017 and 2018 and 2019. And then this year, I'm getting up sort of on the top of the hill here. It's windy. So I went to 25. So it seems kind of close. So I don't know. Maybe 28 is going to be something for next year. I don't know. So I crowded things up a little bit this year. I guess I'm still suffering from the effects of the hurricane last year and some of the damage and post failures I saw there. And of course, back then we were at 45 feet. It's heartbreaking when trellis goes down and on a young orchard. It's expensive.
Okay. Yeah. How did you prepare the soil for this orchard?
Basically, this land where this planting is was mostly cleared and not in an orchard for several years, 40 or 45 years. There's a few corners that had some orchard on it, but for the most part, it's pretty clean land. And so for our preparation, we spent a lot of time with trying to get land tile right. There was existing land tile here. I had to find that all and connect into it and then add into it many places. And then some of this new planting we fumigated. I sort of, lost my lust for fumigation because of all the commotion that goes along with it. And I really started to question its effectiveness. And of course, we were post T-loan at that time. So I just wasn't sure what the effect of it was, and it's expensive. And so I said to myself, maybe we'll forego it. So in the last few years, we haven't been doing any fumigation. And I don't know that I regret it, actually. I think things are okay. And this site is quite hilly, so we have to be quite careful with erosion and cover cropping and so on in the year prior to planting trees. And so we've had some successes in that and a few failures, but we're kind of getting through the worst of this land here now where it's starting to get a little more level where we're headed. Okay,
yeah, and we've had a lot of heavy rainfall events, so have you seen some challenges with those hilly landscapes?
Yeah, sure. Of course, this is the other thing about fumigation. We got to keep open land and fumigate in the fall. And of course, time fumigation is done, we can't get a cover on. We can scatter some hay or stuff around, but I really don't find that very effective. I've done that, and you get as much wash under that hay as you will without it. So I don't find it very effective. And so I've now get a good cover crop of oats or something on there in September that holds well. And so that's been quite successful the last few years. We do have some sort of runs through here, and they show, erosion even through the grass sometimes. So we do go back and fix those up. I do have sort of little rock walls or little rock dams across the orchard rows as best I can to slow water down as it's coming down through here. That's kind of a nuisance because it's hard to keep the orchard floor clean under those trees, but it is effective. So yeah, I think we're pretty much got the erosion thing handled as long as we get something green on there for the end of September.
And how about the fertility on the site? How do you prepare it?
Soil samples are taken, of course, and pH is adjusted 1, if not 2 years before. I do use a fair bit of manure. I have access to poultry manure and beef manure, and so I find myself using that. And a lot of this we've windrowed manure in tree rows. The fall prior to planting, sometimes in the spring of planting, which does provide some nice organic matter and some nutrition. And of course, then when we will, after planting, we will supplement that with triple 17 or something like that once or twice through the growing season.
Now let's switch over to your herbicide program for young trees. What are you using on those?
I use Sinbar on that first year stuff, early Sinbar, light rate, and sometimes with a little bit of Reglone, depending on what the weed development is. And I do make sure I start with a very clean planting bed. Like I will put Roundup, I'll spray it with Roundup prior to planting, several weeks prior to planting, to make sure I can get rid of any grasses, because the grasses are the problem, I find. Then follow up, in later years with Ignite, and start fooling around a little bit with some AIM, as stuff gets a little bit further along, early application of Chateau, which I started to do this year, which I kind of like it. I mean, it doesn't solve all the problems, but it sure does take a bit of pressure off in the early season when you get too many things to do and worry about chasing weeds in the orchard.
Do you have any problem weeds in particular you want to mention?
No, the ones that we always, like everybody, the ones that if you're not paying attention, the ones that get away on you are the lamb's quarters and the ragweeds, and the pigweeds. And and then if you're not careful, you're sending men in to get them out by hand, which I like to think I'm smarter than that I can, get ahead of that before it gets ahead of me. So those are the ones. Then, in the later years, the grasses will start to creep in and we have to watch those, but that takes a few years for that to be a problem.
And with the lack of moisture this year, it's probably good to stay on top of it in a young planting to keep the weeds down.
That's right, because those guys, they grow anyway, it seems, right?
Yeah, the weeds.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And which insects and diseases are your main priorities?
Bar none, their diseases, fire blight is the highest priority, and everything else is in my view is manageable given some time and some patience. Fire blight on these young plantings, just it eliminates infrastructure. So I can't. I've had a few of those, and it's heartbreaking. It's expensive, and so I really have very little patience for that. So I found myself, really very aggressive with the precautions required to stave off fire blight. And that includes all of the things that we know we need to do, early copper, streptomycin, as dictated by weather conditions, and then apogee. I do apply apogee even on young stuff. I even apply apogee in my nursery at low rates multiple times through the year. Other diseases, of course, we have scab to deal with, and we watch that. And mildew on this young stuff and some of these varieties is an issue. I find myself spending more time worried about mildew on new planted stuff, up to 5 years than I do on older stuff. And this year that made a bit of a problem because I see mildew in parts of my orchard I kind of wish it wasn't there. But it's in established trees and so on. It looks bad. It doesn't really affect growth much. And of course, it's, it provides inoculum in the orchard, which I don't like. But I don't have any tolerance for it in young trees, not in that young stuff. It's got to go. And then insects, well, it's all the same, aphids and OBLR, and on that young non-bearing stuff, the usual things, nothing specific or special.
Do you use the defruiting mix, and how effective do you find it?
So it's an economics question because the defruiting mixture that we use is a very expensive mixture, and you need to have a certain volume of fruit on there, in my mind, to make that pay. Because if it's not that much fruit, you're further off to take it off by hand. So we got to find that line block by block, and then if we do the defruiting mixture, I do find it effective. It's not always 100%. You do have to go back and knock off stuff, but even if you don't go back and knock it off, what's left is probably not enough to bother tree growth. I just don't like seeing a bunch of odd fruit hanging all over the place that it's probably not worth harvesting at the end of the year because it's so scattered and it's poor quality. So sometimes I just get more satisfaction out of going and knocking it all off and getting that site.
What year are you planning to crop them?
So some of the 2017 stuff we'll be cropping this year. I have some 2018 stuff, M7s, that we'll be cropping this year. Some stuff on supporter 4, Tango and supporter 4 that was planted in 2018. I plan to crop that. There'll be a lot of stuff that will be stripped because in my view, it's not enough tree structure yet to carry a crop. And I've done that in the past. I've learned, I've cropped stuff too early and I suffer, tree growth for all the years thereafter because of it. So I'm a little bit leery of that. So I tend to try to get, as much of a tree established as I can before cropping. But some of those heavy roots, like 7s and supporter 4, you can probably take crop off them. You may even want to take crop off them earlier so you can start to settle that thing down a little bit.
Okay, we're still at Rob's. We're just going to go down the road now to look at another block. Now this question is unrelated to new plantings, but later on I'll be talking to Josh Olden about organic production. And I know your father planted some disease-resistant varieties on the farm, so do you have any comments on those varieties?
So it's a small orchard, 4-acre orchard that was kind of a test orchard from the station. And they were, trying some scab-resistant varieties there, including Liberty, Nova Mac, Nova Spy, and Mesa Nova, which is a Kenful selection. And those are all scab-resistant varieties. There's no question about that. The big problem with those, of course, is if you're going to try to introduce those to the fresh market, they have no market recognition. And so they're just kind of a non-starter in the marketplace. And I've tried several years to get that crop clean enough to enter it into the fresh market, and I've met with frustration because I can't get the quality, and then no one knows what that variety is anyway. I have some small sales here and there, just small stuff. So really, it's been tough to get traction. That crop now goes to processing, and we'll see. That orchard's getting a little older now. It's a wet block. It's lots of mortality in there. So I don't know what its future is. But for now, it's holding its own.
So this wasn't really part of the plan, but I think we should go look at Rob's nursery because there's a really interesting comparison there. So we're going off script. Are there any rootstocks that you liked working with in the nursery over others?
In the nursery, I don't particularly like 202. I don't even like it in the orchard, to be honest with you. And I'm still trying to decide how much I like supporter 4 in the nursery. It seems to be a little harder to get a good bud take on that. Other than that, the G roots all seem to be fine in the nursery, and M26 is, in the nursery, you talk about it in your outlooks, is the sleeper phenomenon there, which we see a lot of that.
The sleeper phenomenon can happen on tea-budded nursery stock when leaves are stripped. The scion bud appears to be flooded with sap and stall in a rosette of leaves termed a sleeper.
It's been quite frustrating, so we're sort of developing some new techniques on how to handle that.
So next, Rob went on to explain that they stopped tea budding and immediately started chip budding, which created a great visual comparison of the two budding techniques in the field. Let's take a look at this side-by-side comparison. The chip bud is on the right and the tea bud is on the left. The differences seem to be quite pronounced this year, and chip budding was the obvious winner. Research and experience has shown that chip budding works well in short growing seasons, and relative to tea budding it has better take, a more complete union, and more vigorous initial growth. Plant water status and temperature extremes are less of an issue, likely because of fast union formation. So it might not be surprising that chip budding is popular in nurseries throughout the world.
The only thing I'd like to add to that whole discussion is that in these days of all the craziness in the world, that it has to be pointed out that we would be nothing. We would be going nowhere without the help of the people that we have to work for us. And in my case, I have 4 regular gentlemen from Mexico that come and help me. They've been here for the past 5 or 7 years, and they come back every time, and they are very faithful, hardworking gentlemen. They know this orchard inside out, and if it wasn't for them, none of this would be possible, without exception. That causes me as much anxiety these days as anything is, labor.
Well, thanks so much, Rob, for being part of our video tour this year.
You're welcome, Michelle. Glad to do it.